everyone, welcome to the MrpTech podcast. This is episode 185. My name is Matt, and this is the weekly podcast discussing everyday tech for everyday people. And in this week's episode, it's going to be a little different than some of the previous episodes. This episode is going to be a little off the cuff and tell you a little bit about some things that I've been doing over the last few weeks. And it's going to be a mix of a bunch of different topics that sort of are all related to one another, but in this case, it's just something that I've been researching over the last few weeks, and for personal reasons. And I've been off the air for a couple of weeks. I mentioned that I'm starting my summer work schedule, so it was a little bit there was a little bit of a change in my schedule as far as that's concerned. So as I mentioned before, if there's a week or two during the summer where I am not posting and publishing a podcast, it's because of my summer work schedule. So what have I been doing the last few weeks? The last few weeks I have been researching some new a new vehicle. I was basically, my old car was a Toyota Prius. It was a 2013, had about 170,000 miles on it, and I basically have driven it into the ground. When I have vehicles, the idea is I drive them every day, nonstop, and the mountainous area that I live in, it is not good for brakes, not good for tires, not good for maintaining vehicles for the most part. And my normal commute to school and back is like a roller coaster ride through the mountains. So I tend to wear vehicles out pretty quickly. And so basically, the timing sort of hit me that my inspection sticker was up at the end of June. My insurance was rolling over to a new plan, and I had 170,000 miles on my car. I was having some issues with it that was probably going to cost me a fortune if I decided to get them fixed, and knowing that I was going to upgrade my vehicle at some point in the future to a newer vehicle, then I really didn't want to put a whole lot of money into that vehicle. Also, I had, because of COVID, my snow tires were still on the car, and my other tires were pretty well worn at this point, so it needed new tires. So really it all just kind of came together that maybe I might be able to get a deal from one of the local dealers, especially with COVID being, probably affecting sales quite a bit. So what I really had my eyes on was a GMC Terrain, and this Terrain, I've sort of wanted one for years. And now, don't get me wrong, the Prius that I had, a lot of people, there's a bias against Priuses, but I'll tell you that not only did a Prius have power, it had tremendous amounts of storage space. As a musician, I'm always packing the car full. I mean, jam-packed full of sound equipment and gear for performances. And this thing is like a pickup truck with as far as what it can hold in the back of with all those seats folded down. So storage space was something that was important to me. And I used to drive a Honda CR-V years ago, and I really like that mini SUV feel. I like being up higher when I drive. So basically, I started looking at the GMC Terrains, but I wasn't sold on them. And I went to the local GMC dealer, and I really wanted to get a deal because I wanted to have as low a payment as I possibly could. And being off of work, school year ended a little early. And my summer schedule, I had to wait a couple weeks in order to be able to start the summer schedule. So I had time to sort of wheel and deal a little bit. So I managed to the one thing that I wanted in a newer vehicle was Apple Carplay. I've never had a chance to use it, never experienced it, but being an iPhone user, I really wanted Apple CarPlay. And years ago when I was test driving cars just kind of for the fun of it, most dealerships hadn't made the switch yet. Some did not. And what I did not know at the time was that Apple CarPlay is actually installed on your phone, not in the vehicle itself. You just need your vehicle to be CarPlay compatible. And they actually make little devices, I guess, now that you can plug your phone into, and it will make a CarPlay enabled vehicle enabled with CarPlay. So I would check into that. Just something I read recently. Now, so I wanted Apple CarPlay, and most vehicles now have the choice between Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Now, I haven't had a chance to enable to test Android Auto. I really would like to at some point, but I know that because of current regulations, the features are quite limited at this point. I do like the user experience with Apple CarPlay. I'll get into that in a little bit, and I'll just kind of tell you, I'll sort of sum up my story of purchasing a new car. So as I was test driving the Terrain, I really liked it, but I went and test drove a Chevy Equinox. Now, the Equinoxes are basically identical vehicles. Chevy and GM, they're owned by the same company, and they're basically the same vehicles. However, I did notice a few differences. And in the GMC Terrain, the front passenger seat can fold flat, and as well as the back seats. The Equinox cannot do that. And there was little things here and there with the Equinox that was different from the Terrain. And I really found the Terrain a whole lot more fun to drive because of those little things. Now, I went out and I also test drove a Honda CR-V, and I test drove a RAV4, and a few other vehicles too. And ultimately, I knew what I wanted. I wanted the Terrain, but I managed to get the price down to a reasonable amount. And what I then did is they ordered me a car from a dealership. They found one that matched my pricing, and it turned out that was a demo vehicle. So I had 2 more days to go fish around for some more prices at other dealerships, and the price kept coming down a little bit more. Finally, it was reasonable enough where I was able to purchase the Terrain that I wanted, in the color that I wanted, and did have Apple CarPlay. And I was really excited just to kind of test it out a little bit. The very first day that I had the car, I was able to go, I actually had to drive about 2.5 hours to meet up with a friend of mine in the capital of New York, Albany. I went down and had to meet up with a friend who I hadn't seen in a long time. And I was able to test out a few things. Now, listening to podcasts on Apple CarPlay is great. My Downcast app was actually, I really like the user interface for CarPlay and Downcast. Very easy to go through your playlist. Very easy to play. Whatever podcast you want while you're driving. It's easier to see your podcast list. The one thing it didn't do is show your old podcasts that you have already listened to. All of if you've listened to an episode, it doesn't show up. I was a little bummed about that, but it wasn't really a big deal. Audible app works fantastic in iOS CarPlay. Been able to listen to audiobooks and switch between 2 of them very easily. Apple Music, whether you're using iTunes. The one thing that I found that I was a little disappointed in is that Plex does not have a CarPlay app. And I wonder if that has to do with CarPlay not being able to support playing video. Plex is the multimedia app that a lot of people really enjoy using. And if I could use Plex as a music app in Apple CarPlay, I would be absolutely 100% satisfied with CarPlay. And that's on Plex, that's not on Apple. Many people have requested from Plex to have a add-on for CarPlay, and it just doesn't seem to be happening. So I'm a little disappointed in Plex in that, especially as somebody who bought one of the lifetime passes from Plex. That it seems to me that with Android Auto, I think they have an app that's compatible with Android Auto. So I'm not really sure what the deal is with CarPlay at this point. Now, the one feature with Apple CarPlay that I wish was available, all the podcast playing, the audiobook playing, music playing, everything is great. Reading text, very easy to do. The GPS built in is fantastic. You can use Google Maps, you can use Apple Maps. is great. The one thing that I wish you could do, and I just don't understand why it isn't allowed, is to open a weather app and have the weather map showing. And it would be fantastic as somebody who drives a lot. If you know you're headed into a storm, a winter storm, really heavy rain, heavy lightning, something like that, just to have a weather map on. And I don't need a whole lot of bells and whistles, but it would be nice to see where the storms are and compared to where I am. As far as I'm concerned, it's not distracting. It's not like I'm going to stare at it for hours. It would be just nice to be able to peek at it and see where I am compared to the storm. I'm a huge weather person. I participate in weather nets with my local amateur radio operators. So it's something I'm a little disappointed in. And even with iOS 14 coming out and Carplay 14, not seeing that functionality added. Now, I'm assuming it's due to regulations, and I'm hopeful that the regulations may change in the future to allow such a thing to happen. But Carplay was something that, I was really excited about trying, and I really enjoyed it quite a bit. Now, with this new vehicle purchase, the other thing that I've been doing a whole lot lately with is amateur radio, and I was able to participate with Field Day a few weeks ago. I have never participated in Field Day before, and I mentioned this last time that I was sort of watching some videos of a guy that parachutes and talks on his radio as he's doing it, and it's fantastic videos, and sort of inspired to do some testing and work on my radios and get them working properly, because in the past, my old car my radio wasn't really set up to it wasn't very easy to use. It was kind of down in the console in between the front two seats, and it just wasn't something that I could use a whole lot while I was driving. And I've been far more active recently in amateur radio than I have over the last couple of years. Now, I still consider myself a newbie when it comes to amateur radio. I know enough to get myself in trouble, and so I've been experimenting with an antenna on my car. I had somebody build me a roof rack mount, which is not a good thing as far as antennas are concerned, because there's no ground plane when you are attaching your antenna to a roof rack. So I've been actually testing a few things, and seems to work really well on my roof rack. And this week I'm going to switch back to my mag mount, the magnetic mount that goes right on the top of the car, and see if I have an improvement. And that's sort of the spirit of amateur radio, is experimentation and see what works for you. So this whole process sort of started with the idea of getting a newer vehicle and really wanting to test Apple CarPlay. There's other things that come in the terrain. I really enjoy that you can switch back and forth between two-wheel and all-wheel drive, and there's an off-road mode that you can do. And I love the fact that it has the option of both Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. It seems to me across the board on all cars now, that's all included, which is great. Now, I watched the Apple keynote a while back, and there are some minor changes coming to CarPlay where you can set the background image, for CarPlay, which you couldn't do before. And so there are small changes here, support for a few more apps coming along the way. But for me, it's not really even enough to talk about in the show of what the changes are. It was minuscule at best. And so what I've been doing is really over the last few weeks, I've been experimenting, getting to know Apple CarPlay. It's not as customizable as I would have expected it to be, but I find that it's actually more useful than just using the radio setup on my car. There are definite limits to what it has to offer, and only certain apps are available in CarPlay, but honestly, I don't find the lack of app support something that is troubling. Every single app that I use, like as I was mentioning, podcasts and audiobooks and Google Maps, that type of thing, seems to work fine. It does use a lot more data, as from what I've seen, and really, when it comes to it, is Apple CarPlay something that's a necessity when you drive? I actually find that it's much easier to navigate on Apple CarPlay than I do my car's radio. So there's that point to it. The way Apple has the layout is very easy, very well thought out. And, if you're thinking about an iPad and you have the little dock at the bottom, or a MacBook Pro, you have the little dock at the bottom. The dock's on the left side, which is right next to the driver. I think that's a great idea and great implementation. It's still very basic, and I wish it did a little bit more. If it had that weather app, things would be... I would have a flawless review of this. I definitely understand not having videos play on it. In fact, if you want videos to play, you can jailbreak your phone and have videos playing. Not something I'm really interested in doing. So that's what I've been up to the last few weeks. I've been in the works of purchasing a new vehicle, and I also was getting used to some of the features in the car. I've had a couple of, I actually was able to finally play a concert on the 4th of July, which was kind of nice. It was an outside concert, and got to see an FM transmitter at work. It was kind of like a drive-in concert, like a drive-in theater, and our sound was pushed out through FM transmitter, which they went a lot farther than I expected them to. Really, it was a couple of miles that the FM transmitter was sending the signal. And so I was doing that and started work again this year for my summer job, which is way different than it normally is. If you've seen the summer podcast that I put out before, it's usually like completely overwhelming how many people come to this place in the summertime. And because of current situations, obviously, that's a whole lot different. And so I've had a lot of time to just kind of sit down and learn how to use my radios a little bit, and be a little bit more active in the hobby that I have. And here's where I'm going to make a plea to all of you, and I'm always open to changing the format of this show. And this show is something that I really enjoy doing. This show is something that I have a passion for. I am always looking for new and exciting things. Topics have been wide-ranging in this show, whether it was SpaceX or whether it was the International Space Station, or if it was robots that are already artificially intelligent, or if it was, I mean, one of my very first shows, honestly, was how gas tanks work in cars, because it was just something that interested me. It piqued my interest at the time, and I was pumping gas, and I was like, how does this work? I've never even thought about how that works. So very simple technology things that most people don't even think about. I've done Linux, I've done Windows, I've done Mac, I've done video editors, I've done open source software, and sort of just run the whole list of things to possibly get myself in trouble with, because I know enough about these things to get myself in trouble. And, I don't claim to be an expert at any of this thing. So here's where I'm asking you. If there's a topic that you really are interested in, you want me to discuss in the show, send me an email, mrptechreviews@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you, and I'd like some motivation on where to go next with this show, because without the listeners, there's really no reason for me to be doing this. So send me an email. Let me know what you are interested in hearing about. I get bored very easily with talking about the same things over and over again. So I get bored. Somebody left a comment on one of the YouTube channels the other day when I said I was bored with Linux. It's not that I'm bored with Linux. It's that I'm bored talking about Linux all the time. And I use Linux for basically everything that I do, all my computing tasks and needs. It's not that I'm bored with Linux. It's just that, I've seen these major changes happen over the years, and nothing really has been exciting me lately. So when I don't have anything exciting to talk about, I sort of start thinking of other things, and I go other ways. And recently I sort of switched back to Mac a little bit, or iPad a little bit more than normal. And it's not that I don't like Android. I actually really like Android. I've always said I've really liked Android. The problem is when it comes for using sound equipment and music, iPad is just where it is at, as far as I'm concerned. So that's why I'm stuck in the Apple environment. And I get a little flack for it in the Discord room. I'd like to invite you all to join in the Discord room. It's a whole lot of fun. Door-to-Door Geek is there a lot. We have a few moderators that are there, and we have a great group of people that post anything that they want to, really. There are no rules in my Discord room, as long as you're really just treating everybody respectfully, which is a great group of people. We got people from all over the world in the Discord room, and whether it's just posting a meme once in a while, or we talk audiobooks, or we talk Linux, or just general tech questions, or just general chat at all. So a lot of times we're checking in with each other and see how everybody's doing. We've got one user who is on the road a lot. He drives a truck very frequently. We've got other people from all over Europe that join us in the middle of the night, and they post messages, and I see them first thing in the morning. So it's a great room, and I encourage you to do that. If you want to check it out, on my website, mrptechreviews.com, scroll down, you'll see the Discord button. That will bring you directly into the Discord room. If you want to also check out podnuts.com, that's where you can find all the other great shows on Podnuts, whether it's Linux for the Rest of Us, the Makers Mini PC Show, it just list goes on and on. I thank everybody at Podnuts for helping me out and helping me keep producing shows constantly. And I'm going to kind of wrap things up here, but I appreciate everybody who's listening to this show, and I hope that you feel free to contact me at any point in time. I'd love some show topics, and I hope to be hearing from you soon. Remember, if I happen to miss a week here or there, it's just because of my summer work schedule. And I hope everybody's doing well, and I hope you'll keep tuning in. So thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you next time.